Every generation has a player who wins everything, and every generation has a player who gets the credit. These are rarely the same person. Thomas Müller won 34 major trophies, a World Cup, 2 Champions Leagues, 13 Bundesliga titles. He scored 45 goals for Germany in 131 appearances. He won the Golden Boot at a World Cup. He assisted more goals in a single Bundesliga season than anyone in history. And yet, he never won the Ballon d'Or. He was never considered the best player in the world. He was never the name on the poster. He was always the other guy, the one who made the best players even better, the one who was always there when it mattered, the one football somehow forgot to celebrate while he was busy winning everything. This is the story of Thomas Müller, the most underrated player of his generation. Thomas Müller was born on September 13, 1989, in a small community called Ballon, just outside Munich, Bavaria. Population, roughly 2,500 people. From the moment he could walk, he was football obsessed. At age 10, Bayern Munich came calling. Not unusual. Bayern scout the entire region. What was unusual was what their scouts saw in him. Not pace, not power, not dribbling ability, something harder to define. An understanding of space, of where the ball was going to be before it got there. Bayern coaches called it Raumdeuter, the interpreter of space, a player who didn't beat you with skill, who didn't beat you with pace, who simply appeared in exactly the right place, at exactly the right moment. For 10 years he developed in Bayern's academy, watching, learning, reading the game in a way most players never could. In 2009, a new manager arrived at Bayern, Louis van Gaal, demanding, tactical, uncompromising. He looked at the youth system and saw Müller, and immediately put him in the first team. Not because Müller was the most talented, but because Van Gaal recognized something rare, a player who made the team better simply by being on the pitch. In his first full season, 2009-10, Müller helped Bayern reach the Champions League final. He was 20 years old. That same summer, South Africa, the 2010 World Cup. Germany called him up, not as a star, as a squad player. What happened next stunned the football world. Müller scored 5 goals in 6 matches. He won the Golden Boot, the tournament's top scorer. He won the Best Young Player award. At 20 years old, in his first World Cup, Thomas Müller was the tournament's standout performer. The world took notice. But here is where the Müller story gets interesting. Despite winning the Golden Boot, despite being the best player at the World Cup, the headlines were about other players. Messi, Villa, Iniesta. Müller was the top scorer, and somehow still the supporting act. He returned to Bayern and kept winning. In 2013, Bayern's greatest ever season, the treble, Bundesliga, DFB Cup, Champions League. Müller scored 23 goals that season. He scored in the Champions League final. Bayern were crowned the best club in Europe. Müller lifted the trophy alongside Ribéry, Robben, and Schweinsteiger. The headlines were about Ribéry and Robben. Müller lifted the same trophy. Then came 2014, Brazil, the World Cup on the grandest stage, Germany's golden generation, assembled for one final push. Lahm, Schweinsteiger, Klose, Ozil, and Müller. In the group stage, Müller scored a hat-trick against Portugal. Germany won 4-0. He added 2 more goals as Germany progressed. Then came the semifinal, July 8, 2014. Belo Horizonte, Brazil, at home, in front of their own people. 11 minutes. Müller ghosted into the penalty area, unmarked, completely free. He headed Germany into the lead. The stadium fell silent. You've heard the rest of that story. Germany won 7-1, and in the final, against Argentina, Germany won 1-0 in extra time. World champions. Müller received the silver boot, second top scorer of the tournament. The silver ball, second best player, behind Messi. Always behind someone. And left Brazil with a silver medal around his neck. Somehow, that felt right. Not because he didn't deserve gold, but because Müller had spent his entire career being the best second act in football history. What made Müller so unique, so impossible to truly explain, was his playing style. Former Bayern manager Carlo Ancelotti said, "Müller has never been particularly renowned for his athleticism, technique, ball control, dribbling, or pace, qualities typically associated with great attackers. And yet, he was one of the greatest attackers of his generation. How? The answer is in the nickname, Raumdeuter, the interpreter of space. While other players chased the ball, Müller read where space would open up. While defenders tracked runners, Müller stood still in the gap they left. While goalkeepers watched the danger, Müller appeared from nowhere. In the 2019 to 2020 season, Müller set the Bundesliga record for assists in a single season, 21 assists, a record he shares with Messi and Bruno Fernandes in the top 5 leagues. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the most technical. He was simply always there, like a ghost that only defenders could see after the ball was already in the net. In his final years at Bayern, something changed. The club that had been his home since age 10 began to move on without him. New signings, new priorities, a new generation of players arriving. Müller found himself coming off the bench, playing less, contributing in shorter bursts. For a player who had given 25 years to one club, it was a difficult reality to accept. A documentary made about him in 2025 captured it perfectly, showing his despair, his hurt, the feeling of being alien in the very place he had called home for nearly 2 decades. On May 10, 2025, Müller played his final match at the Allianz Arena, a 2-0 win over Borussia Mönchengladbach. Teammates formed a guard of honor. Manuel Neuer, his captain, ensured it was Müller who lifted the Meisterschale one final time, his 13th Bundesliga title, a record. The stadium gave him a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Fans who had never known Bayern without him stood and wept. He left the pitch, and 25 years ended. Later that summer, he joined Vancouver Whitecaps in MLS, not a retirement league decision made in defeat, but a man who simply still loved football, who wanted one more chapter, away from the pressure, away from the expectations, just playing, the way he always had. Thomas Müller finished his Bayern career with 750 appearances, 236 goals, 258 assists, 34 major trophies, the most decorated German footballer in history, alongside Toni Kroos. And yet, he never won the Ballon d'Or. He was never FIFA's best player. He never had a signature boot deal that put his face on billboards worldwide. He was Müller, the player who made Robben better, who made Ribery better, who made Lewandowski better, who made Germany better. The player who won everything while standing in everyone else's shadow. Football has a strange relationship with players like Müller. We celebrate the ones who dribble past 5 men. We worship the ones who score impossible goals. We build statues for the ones who win the Ballon d'Or. But the players who make teams win, who understand space that others cannot see, who turn up in the biggest moments without ever demanding the spotlight, these players we tend to remember only when they're gone. Thomas Müller is gone from the Allianz Arena now, and Bayern Munich, the most successful club in German history, are still figuring out how to replace him. Some players you don't replace. You just learn to play without them and feel the difference every single week. This was the story football never fully told you. Subscribe. There are more stories where this came from.